Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Mathias, and I'm the Legal and Policy Services Director at MABE, the Maryland Association of Boards of Education. I'm sharing this short video as a high-level overview for good board governance and focusing on some of the keys of parliamentary procedure. All Maryland school boards have formal meetings, and they all follow procedure. And this presentation is meant to provide you with a general understanding of key items to make your meetings go smoother, fairer, and be more effective. You can't learn parliamentary procedure in a 10-minute video, but you can get a foundation, and that's what I hope to provide you with today. To start, it's really important to put into context what makes board meetings successful. Effective meetings don't just happen, they're built. This slide identifies key conditions that support productive and effective board governance. I know this presentation is about parliamentary procedure, but note that rules of order and strong leadership are just one part of effective board governance. Board meetings are successful mostly when a board understands its role as a governing body and not as an operational manager, and it sets its actions and goals on measurable ways to improve student achievement and student opportunity. All of this, I think, can be boiled down to one word: preparation. Preparation in terms of board meetings means pre-reading your materials, in setting meaningful agendas, in thinking through and ideally sharing in advance with staff your questions and concerns, and in having a supportive and constructive culture among your district and with your superintendent. So why use parliamentary procedure? First, because it gives your board a shared structure. It helps ensure that even when people disagree, the process stays fair, that everyone has a voice, and that decisions can be made with integrity. Another reason to use parliamentary procedure here in Maryland is because you have to. I think all 24 boards of education use Robert's Rules of Order in some form, whether it's because it's expressly required in your bylaws, in a policy, or in statute. Some only use it as a guide, but regardless, parliamentary procedure will help you with legal compliance and especially with transparency and public accountability laws. These are the three fundamentals of parliamentary procedure that I'm going to share in this presentation. First, there's your agenda. This sets the roadmap for the meeting. What gets discussed and when. It should be adopted at the start of every meeting and can be amended by motion. It helps boards manage time, focus discussion, and ensure legal compliance, for example, with the Maryland Open Meetings Act. Next, I'm going to talk about motions. These are the formal mechanisms for board action. With no motion, there can be no decision. Motions open the floor for debate and must be voted on. There's all sorts of motions, which I will get into a little bit, but know this, that strategic use of motions shapes policy, manages conflict, and protects your process integrity. Finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about quorum and voting. The quorum is your minimum attendance of board members that you need to do business. And depending on the type of motion and depending on the rules of your board, voting and the votes needed to pass a motion may differ. Most motions require a majority, some require a 2/3 majority, but the key here is that without a quorum, there can be no action. Always confirm a quorum before your meeting and before voting. Agendas. The agenda is your blueprint. It's such an important part of successful board meetings. Often, a superintendent and board president will develop an agenda before it's sent to the rest of the board. If something is controversial to the public and it's going to be on the agenda, make sure it's noted in the agenda and make sure to notify any press that might be interested. I highly recommend using a consent agenda for many issues raised in your board meetings. It's a really great way to streamline those non-controversial issues. It's not about hiding anything or pushing your agenda. It's really just about efficiency. Any board member at any time can request that a consent item be pulled for separate discussion. So I highly recommend using consent items. And other board members besides the board president and besides the superintendent can suggest items for inclusion in your agenda. This can be part of the agenda creation process, or it can be entered into via motion to amend the agenda during a board meeting. So what actually should happen according to parliamentary procedure in your meeting? Following Robert's rules, once a motion is made and seconded, It's repeated by the board president to ensure clarity. Then discussion can begin. The president facilitates the conversation by recognizing each speaker, usually by name, to keep order and fairness. The person who made the motion gets the first chance to speak in support of it. After that, members may speak twice to a motion, with time limits that are often set in your policy. Most importantly, all comments must stay focused on the motion itself, not the person, not the past, not anything else, just the issue at hand. So again, what is a motion? A motion is a formal proposal by a member in your meeting that the group do something, that they take a certain action. A main motion brings business before the assembly. For example, I move to approve the proposed operating budget for fiscal year 2025, or I move that we adopt this acceptable use of technology policy. And so this is where the real mechanics start. The main motion opens debate. Then amendment motions allow refinement. Substitute motions can be more substantial changes, and procedural motions keep things moving or just adjust the rules. Remember, no debate happens unless there's a motion on the floor. You don't debate issues that aren't on the agenda and aren't raised as part of a motion. And here's a motion cheat sheet. It's somewhat truncated from the Maryland School Law Desk Book. Quick plug, but feel free to pause this video and take notes of key actions you may want to take or what to say and what Robert's rules classically require for these sorts of motions. In addition, you can check the end of Chapter 1 of your Maryland School Law Desk Book or reach out to MABE if you're looking for a Maryland School Law Desk Book because it's a very, very helpful resource that MABE publishes. So that third key concept, voting and quorum. Again, a quorum means that you have the minimum number of members of your group necessary for an official meeting. A law, your bylaws, or policies are going to determine what constitutes a quorum for you. Most of the time, a quorum is a majority of the entire membership. So for a board with 7 members in it, that's 4 board members, etc. But it's important to note that if you have no quorum, you can't vote. So once you have a quorum and once you have a vote, a majority decision most of the time will carry the day. So I want to talk for a minute about publicly respecting decisions made by the board as a corporate body to support the democratic process of your board and to convey professionalism. A key piece of board success is that when you're in the minority, you're nonetheless recognizing that the majority has carried a decision. There is no single board member that has individual power over decision making, not the president, not anyone else, and outwardly demonstrating to the public that the time to disagree on issues is during a vote and during a debate on a motion and not afterwards. The way that board members handle themselves after a vote, where they will support and defend the board's group majority decision, sends an important message and projects professionalism, cohesion, and builds public trust and confidence in the board's abilities. This is very important and I would argue is assumed and intended by Robert's rules and by all parliamentary procedures. So recognizing parliamentary procedure not as a weapon, but as a tool that recognizes our shared interest in helping the students and families of our community. Parliamentary procedure is not about silencing dissent, but about channeling dissent productively, so that decisions are made openly, respectfully, and with finality. Once a vote is taken, the board speaks with one voice, not because everyone agreed, but because everyone participated in a legitimate, transparent process. That is how trust is built, not just between and among board members, but between the board and the community it serves. Parliamentary procedure, at its best, is a framework that ensures every voice is heard, every view is considered, and every outcome is respected. Thank you very much for joining me on this quick primer of parliamentary procedure. Some final takeaways. Parliamentary procedure is just one tool among many to have a productive, respectful meeting, and local boards in Maryland are expected to use parliamentary procedure and in fact are required to by their bylaws or policies. Remember, your agenda is your blueprint. Make it thoughtfully, make it collaboratively with each other, and let it help you run an effective meeting. Learn the key motions of Robert's rules. Know your board bylaws and policies. And recognize and respect the democratic process. And remember that majority rules. And most importantly, what I said at the outset, continue to be student-centered and be prepared for your board meetings. Thanks very much for joining me.